Hi, my name is Brian, and this is Learning to Draw from the Very Start. This video series is designed to teach the beginner that wants to learn how to draw but couldn't find that right teacher, book, or video. This series will teach you step by step the easiest way possible to draw. So get your pencil and paper and let's get drawing. Welcome to Learning to Draw in One-Point Perspective. Now, I had this video in my head for a long time and I wanted to get it out, so I figured I would go ahead and give it a shot. This thing is not scripted. I try to script these things, but it never really works out the way I hope they will. So bear with me as we go, and I'm trying to make this so easy that your grandma can learn to draw in one-point perspective, provided your grandma wants to learn to draw in one-point perspective. But I'm going to make this kindergarten easy. So when you were young, and you might still be young, did you ever draw a picture like this? You said you want to draw a house. Maybe put some windows in it, maybe a little chimney, some smoke, and then you did the sun up here. And then you did your little energy lines. I'll call them energy lines coming from your sun, your birds. Now, if you ever drew a sun and drew it like this, well, that is the basis for one-point perspective. Now that you have that, keep that in mind. Keep that in mind. Now, what is perspective? Now, this is my definition. This is not Webster's definition, but my definition is perspective is the way you see things versus the way I see things. Now, let's go from there. Use this example. You have these three guys, and they're looking at this table. We've got a table, we got a little plate here, and what is it, a little candle holder, and a cup. Now, three separate people, but they're all looking at the same table, but they see it differently. Their perspective on seeing this table is very different because this guy's standing up, this guy's on his knees, and this guy is laying down, but they're all seeing the same table, but their perspective is different. Now, we'll move on from there. This first guy who's standing up, because he's standing up, he will see the top of the table. Now, his eye line, as another thing, the eye line, usually in perspective, you have your eye line, which means where are you seeing it? You know, in any picture, you have to see this picture. And where are you standing in front of this picture? Now, let me go back so I can show you what I mean by eye line. I think I'm jumping ahead too quickly because I want to show you this stuff. Now, let's just say, here's a picture. Now, somewhere in this picture is going to be a point, one little point. And at that point in this picture, and that point can be anywhere, this point is going to be where two things. It's going to be your eye line. And it's going to be like a line across here. And that tells you how high you are on this picture. Because if this guy was standing up, his eyes would be that high. If somebody just like this guy here, his eyes would be here. So this is where he would see this table. He's above this table. So if somebody was a little shorter, his eye line would be about right here. And then somebody else's eye line could be here. It doesn't have to be in the same row, but it's just where it is. And it's at one point. Now, let's see if I can go back or go forward without having to go back, which I probably will. Now, as I said, this is your eye line. And in any perspective, it's going to be an eye line. And a lot of times, if you study perspective, they'll say your horizon line, which is your horizon line is, in another picture is, let's just say, it's going to be where the sky touches land. So, and let's just use water. That's your water, your clouds, and you have a little boat in the water. Now, this is your sky and this is your land represented. So right here, where this sky touches this water or your land, that is going to be your horizon line. But I don't like the word horizon line because let's just say you do a picture and here's planet Earth and here you are floating in space in your spacesuit. There is no horizon line because there's no horizon. Or what if you're in a cave, you know, or underwater? So I like to say your eye line. So from there, we'll get rid of horizon line and we'll use your eye line or your level of where your eyes would be. So going back here, let me slow down before I miss something. This guy's eye line is at this height because he's over the table. So he's going to see, of course, he's going to see the top of the table. Now, notice I drew another table here. So if he shifted and he was at this point looking from here, he would see this table coming from this way. Now, step back again to the sun. These lines that radiate from your sun, as I said, this is the basis for perspective, because at this point, if you took this sun here and you shrunk it down to a point and you had these lines coming off of it, that point, aka 1 point perspective, if you had these lines, these energy lines, we'll call them energy lines because they're coming from this will be your guide where everything you draw will fall on this line, one of these lines, and you can have a million lines in here, and I'll show you what I'm saying in a second, but stay with me. These are going to be your guidelines for your 1 point perspective. So when you draw any line that's not, what is it, vertical, is it vertical? Or what is it? Horizontal or vertical will fall on one of these lines. No, this line will fall on it. Maybe. All right, we'll go from here. I don't want to get you guys lost. So again, this guy, he's standing up. So his eye line is going to be right there. The next guy, he's kneeling down. He's looking at the same table, but his eye line is going to be basically right across the table. So he's seeing that same table, but from a different perspective. And then we have, lastly, this guy here who's laying down. So his eye line is going to be lower than the table. So he's going to see it even more different. He's going to be seeing under the table, whereas this guy saw the edge of the table, or the very evenness of the table, and this guy saw the top of the table. Now, from here, let's go back to the 1 point. When you start drawing any picture, the first thing you're going to say is, let's just say here's your picture, here's your paper that you want to draw. The first thing you say is, well, what am I going to draw? So, what am I going to draw? Let's do the infamous train tracks, and everybody does the train tracks. So, where do the train tracks end? Train tracks come to a point. They always come to a point. You know, at that point is the point. That's your 1 point where everything ends at. So you say to yourself, how high do I want that point? Where do I want that point? That 1 point perspective. Where's the eye line going to fall on this picture? So let's just say we'll do it. And it doesn't have to be in the center. A lot of people put it in the center. But let's put it over to the edge here. Now, you have your point. That's your eye line right here. Now, remember when we did the energy lines here, that's going to come out. Whenever you have your point established, you draw your energy lines. And drawing your lines are just drawing, you've already got this one, your eye level. You draw another one this way, make an X that way, and it's going to go all the way across the paper. And the bad thing about perspective is You have to get it right. If you don't get it right, later on, everything will be so off that you just get frustrated. So for time's sake, I'm not going to try to be perfect. So basically, you're going to get another line here, another line here. So you're just doing a line in between each line until you have something like this. Let me take this away because this is an old piece that I used a while back. So this is my point here. So this is my eye line, which is always going to go straight across. And these are the energy lines, yes, that comes off of that one point. These are all your guidelines. And from here, you draw. Now, let's go back to the train tracks. And I need to slow down a little bit because I hope you're staying with me. So, using these lines, unless it's a vertical line, or the horizontal will be this one. But the horizontal will only going to be here on that line. So, using your lines, you say, I'm going to put my train tracks in, and they're going to disappear at this point. So train track, let's use this set of guidelines. So you put your tracks on it, and it's just using your energy lines to guide you. Now let's just say, for the sake of drawing, this was a tunnel right here, and this is a mountain that the train was going into. You're still going to have your energy lines, but like I did on this, I used tracing paper. And a lot of times people will use a light table, and I'll show you what a light table is if you don't know what a light table is. But they'll use a light table, and they'll put this underneath the paper, put it on top of the light table, and you see the lines coming through. That way you won't have 1,000 lines to have to erase. Now, I'll pause this for a second because I just lost my train of thought. This point, your eye level, can be anywhere on this paper. It could be here, it could be here, it could be on that line. But if you move it up, you'd have to have a whole new eye level, and your train tracks, you have to have the point your train tracks would come down differently. Let's do this in red, just because. So let's just say the point would be here. It's my eye level. Then I'm going to do my energy lines coming off here. And then let's just do this one. And my train tracks would be a little higher than this one. And then you'd have your tunnel again, your mountain. So it depending on where your eye level is, depends on the angle of your picture. Let's stop right here for a second. All right, this is a light table or a light box, depending on your size. And basically all it is plastic. It's a smoked plastic, and it has a light inside of it. So when you put your paper on it, you can trace through it. You just turn your light on, and I'll use this one as an example. Well, let's use this one as an example. You put your guidelines or whatever, and it could be a picture, you can trace it. And then when you put your paper on it, hopefully you can see that. Let's see. I don't know if you can see that on the camera because this is a bad angle. Well, let's use a thinner one. This is this, and this is that. And that might be bad on camera. The drawing table is at an angle, and the light table is at an angle. So you'll be able to see through this, and then you see your guidelines, and you just draw over top of that. Hopefully you can see this. But that's what a light box is, light table, as I like to call it. And I think this thing, somewhere between, I don't know, maybe about $40 to $80, depending on the size you get. Okay, let's get back to our lesson. I had to get rid of all of that junk in my messy drawing table. And as I say, you'd put this underneath the light table, put your paper on top, and then you can draw over it. And let's use this big one here just for a better example. And as I showed you, when you first start, you're going to have your eye level. At that eye level, you're going to have your point. This is where your point of perspective. This is where every line runs back to or runs out of. Once you do that, you start drawing whatever it is you're drawing. We drew the train tracks, which ran into that point. Now, as I said before, every line is going to fall on one of these lines except for anything vertical or horizontal. Except the only horizontal line is going to be the one that goes straight across, which is going to be your eye line. That's the only line that's going to fall on that, is that one. And I keep messing up with the vertical and horizontal lines. So let's just say I was going to do a building, and let me use a different color. So this is my eye level, and we'll do a building. So vertical lines here and here. This is as wide as my building is going to be. Now, the top of the building is going to come from one of these lines here. And let's use this line here. It's going to ride this line all the way back. Let's get rid of this. So the side of my building, which is going to be a horizontal line, which will not fall on one of these lines. It's going to go straight back, and it's, like I say, it's the only one that falls on that one, and it's going to come straight down. Now, if I do the bottom of this building, or let's turn it into a box, and I'll use this line, since it's an existing line, we're going to go straight down here to here, catches that, and then just go straight across here. So now you have a perfect box drawn, or rectangle drawn in 1 point perspective. Now, if I was going to make this into a building, and I was going to do windows, let's just say these two lines are going to be your windows here. And your vertical lines, and the lines that fall on these lines that are going back. Now you have your windows in perfect 1 point perspective, because they fall on one of these energy lines, as I call it, because it radiates out from that tiny dot, or that sun that you drew when you were small, and you still might be small. So let's get rid of this. In the same way, let's just say this was a wall, or this is the front of a house. So you wanted to put a door. The door has to follow that line. Now on the side, it wouldn't work because you have to follow these two lines. So if you put a window here, it would still have to be, it would be straight up and down. As I said, these are the lines that won't fall on these energy lines, or ride these energy lines back to that point. And you could put whatever, because if you did, let's just say I put a window here, and let's just say it's a window, and I wrote it, I did that, you can tell it's off. The trained eye can see that this is off. The untrained eye will see that there's something wrong, but they'll figure it out in time. The window's off because you wrote that line back to that point. Now, same thing with the train tracks. If you did the train tracks, and there's a way to space these out so they are even and it doesn't look bad. I've done this a lot, so I can kind of gauge where they should sit so they look like they're going back. And so, as some people say, going back in time, they're going back in space. Now let's just say, and we'll jump ahead a little bit. Let's say you want to draw a person or people, the same thing. You want to ride this, one of these lines. You're going to have that, and I'll use these two. You start out with that rectangle, and this is this would be the person's shoulders, and this would be the person's feet. And let's just say I'll put his head there, and I'll do this kind of a almost stick figure type. And check out some of my videos. Check out my video where I showed you how to draw people. Quick, easy way to draw people. And then let's just put his arms like this. Now you can round that off later, but this is a person drawing a perspective. Now, if you want to draw another person, it's the same thing. It still would fall on that line. Some people worry about the heads. I don't really worry about the heads. It's the shoulders that I concentrate on. And this can go all the way down the line. And this is getting into a little more advanced perspective. But once you get this, and I'll go over step by step to show you the 1, 2, and 3 of how to do it. It's very simple. Now, let's say you wanted to put a person in front of this guy. What you do is your vertical line here, the vertical line at the shoulder. Then, since this guy is facing me or facing you, it's just going to be another rectangle. And then you have that guy that's as tall as him. It's a little off, but you get the point. And same thing with this guy. If you wanted to put a guy in front of him, same thing. It wouldn't fall back on those lines. And if you wanted to go back, same with that. Draw lines. You could end up with a million lines. Let's get a blue pencil. You can end up with a million lines from this, which is why the light table is good. So if I did his shoulders, and I put one guy in front of him, and I do the feet too. Coming back, it's got to come from that line. You have to start here and you draw from that line, or your drawing will be thrown off. So go all the way up. Let's come down. This is blue. I'm getting switched, mixed up with the blue and the red to this point. So that point right here. Then you can draw another guy. And this is good if you're drawing people on a crowded street. And as I said, you'd shape the people up later, but this is just a guideline. I mean, this guy, he's really wide right here, but you'd shape the people up, later so they can look more like people instead of box figures. Now, the same thing, let's say you're going above. Now, all this is below the horizon. I used the wrong word. This is below the eye level. Now, let's go above the eye level. Let's say, I'm trying to think of what object to draw. I don't want to go round. Let's just do a square airplane, shall we say. Square, and I want to use this line. It's kind of wide. Square airplane. I'm following this line. Flying car. No, let's just go with an airplane. And then your wings. A bad example, but you'll see that it comes off of this guideline. So just like this guy who saw the bottom of the table, because he is below that, you see above any object. Above any object? The object will be above you, so you see the bottom of the object. And my lines could have been better straight up and down, because you'd see the side of this airplane and maybe his tail back here and maybe the little fins. And this is a bad example of an airplane, but I just wanted to do square. And it doesn't always have to be square, but in the beginning, if you're a beginner, it's kind of hard to do the round, because that would require more lines going back. And perspective is very easy, but it's very hard at the same time, because when I first learned, I had no idea what I was doing. So I took a class and I still didn't understand what I was doing. As the teacher was like showing us stuff, and I was like, what? And I thought I had to continue to learn on my own before I could get it, but I had to break it down to its most simplest functions. That's more of a submarine, but you get the point. And go for detail here. The engines, but anytime you draw a line other than a circle or a vertical or horizontal, it must go back to that point. It's called one point. Everything goes back to that one point. Even the engines go back to that one point. So you see how you can have, thousands of lines actually that will be all across your paper, and you would have to eventually erase that. So it's good to have your paper underneath here, light table, and then makes it a little easier, but you'd have to tape it. If you go that route, tape your paper underneath of it so it won't move. And when I first started, what I did was I had a lamp. I had a small lamp, just say like this, and I had laid it on the ground. I took the shade off and I laid it on the ground, and I had 2 chairs on the side. And let's just see if I can draw that just to give you, this was my first, I can't afford a light table, ghetto excuse for having a light table. I had 2 chairs right here. Excuse my crude example. And I had my lamp. I think it was a real short lamp, some type. And I took the shade off, the lamp shade off. So here's my lamp, and I set it on the floor, and this is my extension cord. And I had a glass table, a glass top from a coffee table that I had. This was years ago. And I just placed the glass table here between the 2 chairs and the lamp underneath of it and turned it on. Now it was extremely bright, but it worked for what I was trying to do, and that was my ghetto version of having a light table. And if you don't have one, you plan on getting one, but you can't afford it yet, I mean, you can give that a try. It works in a bad way, but it works. It's extremely bright, but as I say, it can work. Okay, so now going back over everything I covered before we wrap this thing up, just go over the basics. You have your one point, and it can be anywhere on this paper, and I'll show you that later. And anything below this eye line, and I'll use a box, you will see the top of it. It's got to fall on the line. And that's why when people draw perspective, they use boxes, because it's so easy. And this, same thing here. And this is a little off, but by doing it, you get the idea of what I'm trying to say. So you will see the top of this. Anything above your eye line, you will see the bottom, just as you did the 2 planes. And I'll do a small box, and I'll use this guideline, and you'd have to do another guideline here. So this would be the bottom, and your side is going to be vertical, and this right here would come down like so. So you're seeing the bottom of the box. Anything on your line, we'll use this. You won't follow these lines. You won't follow these lines. It will go straight across. You won't see top or the bottom, but you will see the side. This is the only time you follow that. If you have a box that's turned, if you have it just straight forward like this, you won't see anything. You just see your front. So looking at this, let's see if I covered everything. And there's a lot more to cover, but I just want to give the basics without giving too much to throw you off, because I want your grandma to understand what's going on. So let's wrap this up and do one step by step. Okay, we've got your paper, we've got your drawing. Let's just say I want to use a pencil. I want to put my vanishing point right there, or the point, which is where every line vanishes into. I'll put the vanishing point right here, which establishes my eye level. Now let's do a room. So remember, every line, you have your energy lines that's going to come off. I don't want to do them yet. I just want to do the ones that I need. But you get the point. You do your X, you do your plus symbol, your X, and then in every line in between this, you draw another line through, straight through, and it's got to come all the way across your paper. So I don't want to do too much yet. So let's do a room, which is another standard. So I'll do my box here. Now that's your back wall. Now from here, from this corner here, go out. I'm just winging it right now. This is gonna be my wall. So this line misses it, so we'll use this line here. That's why I didn't want to put lines in there that I didn't really need. This line falls on it, that's good, and this line here. So let's get rid of the rest of the lines, and we'll put them in as we need them, so that you will understand a little better when we need that line. So, and let's keep this. And another way to measure, let's say if this was a 10-foot wall, this is your ceiling, your floor, and is your wall, and your wall. If this is a 10-foot, halfway would be 5 feet. So if a person was against a wall, you had like another foot, and you could measure it 5, 2.5, 1. So if you drew a person, this is 5. Let's say this is about 6 here. So if you drew a person on that wall who was 6 feet tall, it would be like that, of that tall. So if you're drawing a room, it's good to measure first how big your room is. And the same thing we did with this. If you wanted to put more people in the room, you would just follow this guy like that, and another person would be here. But we're not doing people, we're just doing the perspective room. So let's say this is going to be a hallway, and let's put a door here. And remember, any vertical or horizontal lines will not follow these energy lines that come off. So now we're going to do another door here. Let's see, we put a door here. This door is, I don't know, let's say 7 feet. So from there, the 7-foot mark goes across here. From here to this point, we're going to draw that energy line coming off here. So my first door would be here. Second door can be here. Third door, and so forth. So same thing. If, let's say this was a hallway to a hotel room, and I want to put my doorknob here. And every line you put that's not vertical or horizontal has to follow that. So this would go all the way across, like so. So my doorknob would be here. Doorknob would be here. And even at here, this point, these two lines here, where they converge, almost where they hit this, you would go straight across, and your doorknob would be here. So let me flip this up because it's hard for me to see. And straight across like that. And then let's just put a doorknob on here just because, and I think hotel rooms don't have doorknobs. But I just want to be difficult, and we get rid of these other lines, and you can see how confusing it would get the more lines you put into it. which is, you know, the reason for the light table. Let's get rid of this, rid of that, rid of that. So you have you have your doors. And if you wanted to put a glass in the door, changing it from a hotel again, you have your lines again. That's kind of high for this door. Windows, same thing here, windows. Now, if I wanted to put, let's just say furniture somewhere, let's put an end table between this for whatever reason. Now, you have your door here, you have your door here, so you have wall space here. And let's bring it out from here to here. Again, like that. And you're gonna make a box. And I did a video on learning to do, actually it was learning to draw anything and everything. And you learn to manipulate shapes. And I'm gonna do a video on that, teaching just manipulating shapes. So from here to the wall, up, from here down. And like I say, if your lines go off anywhere, it throws everything off. A lot of people hate perspective, and you know, I'm kind of one of those people. But there are times when you have to do perspective. And since it's not a glass table, we'll erase this. So what you have is a box in perspective. Now let's turn this into a table by giving it somewhat thickness, and then your line for your feet. And remember, this falls on that line. I just erased it, and you erase this line like so. So now you have a table in between your doors, so you know they can come out, they can put their dirty towels or whatever, or you leave a cup or something. And I don't want to get into circles and perspective because that's a whole new video. You know, whatever, room service, they finish, they bring their stuff back out. And let's say you want to put lights, ceiling lights, same thing with that, follow that. And these are going to be off-center track lights. Here, 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 and here. So you want to erase this line, and this line. This starts another light here, so like that. And make them a little thick. And then you have your ceiling lights. So you want to put a carpet just on the floor. You know, this line coming off of here, coming off of here. And you have a carpet. And there's so many things you can put in this room. You put a design on the carpet, and the carpet. But as I say, any line that's not vertical or horizontal must fall off to one of these energy lines that come out. And you can have, this is your point, you can have 1,000,000 lines because you have so much stuff in your room that it has to fall on one of these lines, because every time I drew something new, I had to make a line for it. But you don't want your lines clogging up your picture, because that's a lot of erasing you have to do. And you can do it really, really light, and if you come back and ink it, that does help. But you use a ruler. You use a ruler. A ruler was always my enemy, because a ruler to me was too confining. But if you're going to do like interior design or not agriculture, what is that called? When you're doing that, your exterior, you're designing buildings, architecture, you have to use that ruler, and you have to be proficient in perspective. Agriculture, architecture, architectural design, if I'm not mistaken. You know, and you can do this all day, and then when you finish, you just erase your extra lines, which you don't need, which leaves your paper really messy. But you know, unless you have the light table, you do that. So once again, recapping: have your picture, find your eye level, your vanishing point, your eye line. From that, you draw your energy lines. You know, a million of them. And then you just follow it. And you say anything that falls on these lines is not vertical or horizontal. Follow that line. And if you did another box, follow that line. Coming down, you did another box, follow that line, and you have a line up here too. Coming down, so let's just say you did a conveyor belt, you know, with boxes. Some people work on the conveyor belt. They probably don't want to see this because they see stuff like that coming down off that belt all day. You know, it would look like that. Let's just say you had your belt, whatever the conveyor belt work looks like. I did that years ago. Don't quote me. I don't know what exactly what the conveyor belt looks like anymore. I don't want to know. You got some line, and I know it has the legs that hold it up. Oh, the bad memories. And then you have your belt. Like so. Yeah, I remember more than I thought I did. So yeah, your perspective. And then you'd have your person. Let's say you have your person. He'd still have to be in perspective unless he's straight on. If he's like straight on looking at you, you don't have to worry about it. But if he's in line with this conveyor belt, your shoulders would fall on that, let's just say. I'll have this guy bending over a little bit. He's checking the packages. But his shoulders will still fall on that line. They'll be curved a little bit. For the most part, they'll still fall on that line. Put some clothes on the guy. You know, he's not happy. He's been working 24 hours on the on the package line. He's tired. He's sweating. He wants to go home, see his family. So yeah, just remember, even his waist, you know, his feet, if his feet were down here, all of this would fall on one of these energy lines that radiate back to that one point. Now, 2 points is just putting a second point on that same line, on that same eye line. But that's a different video. So you have your 3 steps again. Just to go over to make sure I taught it the way I wanted to teach it to you. You have your picture, find your eye line. This is as high as you want to go. Do your lines, your energy lines coming off, and then you should already know what kind of picture you want to do. And then follow your guidelines. You're doing a car. Follow your guide. This is your road. This is your speed limit sign. You know, so this is your sunset, your sky, your highway lines. And this is another car here coming up. Yeah, the first thing, point, eye line, energy lines, draw your picture. So I might do another one detailed, another video with more detail on 1-point perspective. If you like it, give me a thumbs up, leave a comment, and tell me yes, please do more videos on perspective, or no, please don't do another video on perspective. That would really suck. But be kind, and hopefully I will do one on 2-point perspective soon, if I can get it in my head and out of my head. And I hope you enjoyed and learned. and I will see you in another video.